Okay, hello everyone. Clark Towson here. I'm the CEO of INTJ Billing. In today's video, I'd like to go through an article from Forbes, that's Forbes.com. The article is by Caitlin Long, who is a senior contributor who brings Bitcoin slash blockchain through a 22-year Wall Street veteran's lens. Title of the article is Banks Are About to Face the Same Tsunami That Hit Telecom 20 years ago. This is a very good article. I encourage you all to check it out. I'm going to go through it now and I'm going to make some comments on it. What Caitlin says is that she fears global bank regulators are about to make a decision that will unintentionally obsolete, quote unquote, obsolete the banks by prohibiting a coming tech pivot. Making this mistake would guarantee that the tech industry continues going around the banks, right as internet native payment technologies are starting to scale. The telecom sector offers a cautionary tale when voice over internet protocol, that's VoIP, VoIP, was invented in 1995. Most people disparaged it as a technology that couldn't scale and wasn't a threat to the telecom giants. Then, around 2003, the technology to scale voice over IP arrived, and that technology was broadband. And within a flash, most of the telecom industry's copper wire networks became obsolete, useless relics. Bitcoin is quote unquote money over internet protocol, as is Ethereum potentially. Just as VoIP moves voice data around the internet natively, Bitcoin and Ethereum move value data around the internet natively. Most people disparage Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on as protocols that can't scale, can't possibly threaten the incumbent financial industry, just as they denigrated voice over IP. But the scaling technology is now here. It's called the Lightning Network, which is a Bitcoin layer 2 protocol. Its throughput capacity roughly equals that of Visa. And just hold on a second. Forbes.com, let me just pause here and say Forbes.com is full of ads and it makes it very difficult to read, right? So next time I read Forbes.com, I'm going to go through a program to just get the text. Just get the text, right? So we don't have this happen again, right? Yeah, Lightning Network. So its throughput capacity roughly equals that of Visa, and payments made over Lightning cost virtually zero. There are other scaling technologies too. If I'm right and scaling technologies for internet native money protocols have arrived, then many legacy systems operating in the financial system today will be obsolete within a handful of years. As CEO of a new breed of bank, a data bank, dollar and digital asset bank, defined as a depository institution authorized to handle both and pronounced like data bank. My company lives with the problems inherent in the banking industry's antiquated legacy systems every day. Culturally, banks have a history of building complex walled garden, quote unquote, walled garden IT systems. Fintechs sprang up in recent years to provide efficient front ends that act as middleware between antiquated back-end systems and the user experience demanded by customers. Culturally, fintechs build the opposite of banks' IT systems. Fintechs generally build their systems to be as open and low-walled as possible to create network effects. Had banks done this, fintechs wouldn't need to exist. But until money over internet protocols came along, i.e. Bitcoin, banks still had a role because fintechs still needed to partner with the legacy bank to settle their customers' US dollar payments. Money over internet protocols at scale are truly a threat to traditional banking because they enable money to move outside the traditional antiquated payment rails. To date, the US banking industry has lost roughly $600 billion, or 3% of its deposit base, to the crypto industry. And that happened before money over internet protocols scaled. This is before The Lightning Network came along, right? In other words. Despite all the legal, regulatory, accounting, and tax problems faced by their products, and all the criminals and fraudsters running rampant who should be in jail, the tech industry has proven its ability to go around the banks. INTJ Billing is an example of that, right? Setting up Bitcoin wallets for sex workers here in Pattaya, Thailand, enabling them to receive money. It doesn't go through a bank or payment company or anything like that, right? It will take Lightning a few years to lay down the proverbial broadband scaling infrastructure before the money over internet protocols hit their tipping point at scale, right? Tipping Point, that's from the book by Malcolm Gladwell. I'd recommend that you read that book. It's a very interesting read. But make no mistake, it's happening. The proverbial undersea cables that scale voice over IP are being laid before our very eyes. But the aha of these money over internet protocols isn't cost or scale. There are two ahas that matter far more: integration speed / cost and developer communities. Integration speed and cost. Anyone in the world can become members of these emerging payment networks in the span of a few hours using equipment that costs a few $100s. See, that's interesting, isn't it, right? Anyone in the world, right? Anyone in the world, and who's got a smartphone, right, can be a part of the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Bitcoin is for everyone. Those sex workers over there in Soi 6 that I'm helping, that includes them, right? Fast integration speed, right? Span of a few hours. Doesn't even take that long for me to set them up with a Bitcoin wallet. Right? Banks' IT systems will never be able to compete with that. It's not even a question whether legacy technology architectures can compete with these emerging protocols, for the simple reason that it's fast, cheap, and easy to join these networks. Well, I won't say that it's easy for the people over here in Pattaya, Thailand, but it is fast and it is cheap, right? And it's getting easier by the day. Having a middleman like myself and INTJ Billing over here, that's my goal, to abstract away the complexity and to make it simple and easy for these people. I recall a recent conversation with a B2B, that's a business-to-business payments company, whose executive was very proud that his team whittled down to only 3 months the time required for its business customers to integrate with its system. In the legacy world, 3 months is impressive, but the paradigm has shifted. Payment system integration time is now measured in hours, right? Not in months or years, hours. And in a few $100s, not a few $1 million. It's obvious which approach will win. Developer communities. Open, permissionless protocols have huge developer communities, which compounds the speed of their ecosystem development and network effects. Network effects are all about compounding. The code libraries and developer tooling available for Bitcoin and Ethereum are critical infrastructure that banks' proprietary systems cannot replicate. Moreover, these developer communities organically create interoperability. Banks' walled garden systems with closed groups of developers will never be able to keep up with their pace of innovation. How true is that, right? So what could be the role of banks in the world I'm describing? Answer: banks become software application providers, providing access-controlled applications that run on top of the open, permissionless protocols, and to make them accessible even to unsophisticated users, just as the telecom companies do with voice over IP. And that's obvious to all of us, right? With VoIP. I'll bet very few of us use the command line interface to make a phone call, even though we could use it if we wanted to. Most of us pay to use telecom providers instead because they make the interfaces or make the user interface so easy. And that's what banks will do too, provide access-controlled applications to ease the use of money over internet protocols. Huge successful businesses have been built exactly this way, as access-controlled applications running on top of open, permissionless internet protocols. Auto companies are just one of many examples. They're software companies now, albeit providing software that runs on a different type of hardware. What about central banks? What would be their role in the world I'm describing? No different. They'll become providers of software application for issuing fiat currency that runs on top of open, permissionless protocols too. That brings me back to my fear that global bank regulators, specifically the BIS, are about to make a decision that obsoletes, quote unquote, obsoletes the banks. Why? Because the BIS is proposing bank capital treatment that would effectively block banks from interacting with open, permissionless protocols. If they do that, they're guaranteeing that the tech industry will just keep going around the banking sector. The biggest concern of global bank regulators with banks using open, permissionless protocols, I suspect, is compliance. But banks don't need compliance to be built into the base layer of their IT systems. Compliance can be built into applications that run above the base layer and which control access. In fact, that's what banks are already doing today with TCP/IP. Every bank uses TCP/IP, and yet strictly controls access to their online banking platforms. Criminals and sanctioned countries use TCP/IP today too, but banks have the tools to block them from using banks' applications. Same thing with Bitcoin and Ethereum. Banks have the tools to block illicit finance from using their applications. It's easier to police illicit activity on open blockchain systems than it is in legacy systems. At its pivotal juncture, telecom was a heavily regulated industry, just like banking is today, at its pivotal juncture. How then did the telecom companies pivot to become software companies and avoid obsolescence? Answer: regulators enabled them to make that pivot. Very interesting. That's what banks will become too, software companies. But only if bank regulators enable banks to make the same pivot. If they don't, then it will be obvious, looking back 10 years from now, why the tech industry won, right? So we're at a pivotal, very, very, very pivotal point in history with all of this sort of stuff, right? Right? It's a very interesting analogy, isn't it, to compare where we currently are with banks with 20 years ago with the telecom industry. I mean, if you think back 20 years ago, right, the cost of making a call using any of the traditional providers, telephone networks was an international call was very expensive, right? So we had things like Skype popped up to provide that functionality. And then later down the line, we had other applications like WhatsApp and Line. And then when Facebook came to the fore, we had Messenger. And so it went. So the technology companies won at the expense of the telecom companies who were ripping us all off for many, many years when it comes to making international calls, right? And here we are with banks and the finance industry, right? And I don't think anybody, I don't think many people are going to feel much sympathy for the banks with this tsunami that's about to hit them, right? Because of Bitcoin. Right? Banks have been ripping people off for years, as we know, right? And fees and charges and all the rest of it. Don't get me started on banks, but this is where we're going, right? And with services that I'm setting out to provide over here, Mr. Bitcoin, setting up 700 sex workers with Bitcoin wallets in the Soi 6 environment, enabling every single one of those workers to receive Bitcoin on-chain or via the Lightning Network, either direct to their phone or direct to the Bitcoin wallet that I've set up for them on INTJ Billings BTC Pay server, right? That is empowerment. None of those transactions are going through a traditional bank or a traditional payments company, right? It's the industry itself that I've empowered to do this, me being over here working side by side with them, right? So, yeah, interesting article. And I think Caitlin is right that, the banks are about to face that same tsunami that hit telecom 20 years ago. This is a very, very interesting article. Caitlin obviously is the voice of experience here, 22 years working on Wall Street through a veteran's lens. So she knows what's going on. She can see things very, very clearly. And hopefully you can see things very clearly as well with her article, as I certainly do. Bitcoin is money over IP. A lot of people say, oh, well, what about all these other altcoins, right? There's which one do I trust? Which one do I trust and invest in? Because there's so many out there. Well, hang on a second. Bitcoin is money over IP. Bitcoin is a protocol. TCP/IP is a protocol. There is one internet. It runs on TCP/IP. Everything was built atop TCP/IP. It's the same thing when it comes to cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is money over IP. Bitcoin is the base layer built on top of it with the Bitcoin Lightning Network. It's layer 2 technology. There's not going to be another Bitcoin, right? All these altcoins out there are just one big distraction, okay? This is why I'm building over here on top of Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. None of the rest of these cryptos, any of this other stuff that's out there, they're all complete scams, right? I'm building on the base money layer. Never forget this, right? And it's a big lesson to the industry over here as well, which is rife with people, right, who are coming from the outside, pushing crypto this or crypto that, right? All these fucking people, right? I haven't had one legitimate crypto person come up to me in the entire time that I've been over here that have seen me in the street wearing my Bitcoin t-shirt. So just want one person, right, who's legitimate, who's not running a scam, who's doing the right thing, right, to come up to me, introduce themselves to me, do the right thing by the industry over here, right? Just one, just give me one, right? I think it's an important lesson when you look at voice over IP, it's one protocol, right? VoIP protocol. Money over IP, one protocol, it's Bitcoin, right? Not the rest of these altcoins. It's not the rest of these altcoins, right? Yeah, so very, very interesting where all this is going. It is quite amazing, isn't it, when you think about the sex workers here and being empowered to accept money without going through a bank or a payments company, right? Because I came over here and led the way on this and showed people how it can be done. Regardless of what happens to me, regardless of what happens to INTJ billing, the path, right, has been trod. Other people can see that I've walked this path because of these videos, regardless of what the regulator in Australia says, regardless of what the Thai regulator might say, regardless of whether I do this legally or illegally. If I try to do things legally and set up a Thai company, get a work permit, go through all that sort of process, which is what I'm planning to do later on this year, right? Or whether I didn't do that. The videos are out there. Okay, my videos are out there. People can see, right? This is the way, this is the path, this is how we do it. Okay, so I've achieved my goal. A large part of my goal was this, right? When the regulator said no to me, I said, right, this is happening anyway. All right, whether I get it off the ground or somebody else gets it off the ground, I'm putting out all the videos for free. I'm wording up Soi 6 and I'm wording up the entertainment industry over here in Thailand. All right, regardless of what happens to me, you can chop my head off. There'll be other people who come over because they've seen the path that I've tread, right? They've seen my ideas. So it's very, very important to me. All right? Of course, don't make it easy, do they, regulators and governments? I mean, do you know how much hassle it is for me to come over here to register a Thai company and everything that entails? Get a work permit, everything that entails, a business visa, everything that entails. It even goes up to the Bank of Thailand, right? So then there's all these rules and regulations, all this sort of stuff, right? That makes it very, very difficult for me to do this work that I want to do legally and by the book, right? Very, very difficult, almost impossible. Wonder, all right, well, why don't we see significant innovations coming out of Thailand? Well, I'll tell you why. After looking into it very, very closely for a number of months now, there's no incentive for an entrepreneur like me to come over here, try to innovate in this environment, do things 100% by the book and legally. You've got all these rules and regulations that make it very, very difficult to do this work, right? So what does that mean in practice? Well, it means because all these videos are out there, whether I do the thing or whether I can't do the thing, right? Somebody will do the thing at some point in time because I've laid the path, shown people the way, right? And I'm building on top of Bitcoin, which is money over IP. Money over IP, right?
So yeah, interesting article. Do check it out. Have a good read through it. I know I've just read through it, but have a read through it as well. So that's it for me. All the best, everyone. I'm Clark Towson, CEO of INTJ.